Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am your co host, Rico Borrego, and this is the podcast known as Relatively Sound, the podcast that breaks the spell of the typical. Now, as you may have noticed, Tony's not here. Now, if you haven't heard last week's episode, you may be a little confused, but basically, Tony is going to be MIA for a little bit. He is practicing for some gigs coming up, actually this weekend, and then also in July. If you check out last week's episode, you can hit up the links to buy tickets to see him performing guitar for Anna Thompson's band. So today I have my lovely girlfriend Lyndsey here to co-host an episode with me. Lyndsey, why don't you say hi to everyone?
Hello. I'm coming for your job, Tony.
Well, hey, that's okay with me because you're a lot better to look at than Tony. So, I mean, hey. Now, today we're going to do a little artist appreciation, and no better band for Lyndsey and I to talk about today other than the band Mutemath, Lyndsey's favorite band of all time.
No question.
Now, you may have heard that name before, and if you listen to this podcast, it's because Tony and I did a album for album episode for their third studio album, Odd Soul. Now, Tony enjoyed the album, and I love that album. Lyndsey, you heard I think you actually listened to the whole episode.
Yes.
And you weren't super happy with some of Tony's comments on the album.
No, he threw out some fighting words. So I think the phrase he used was basic rock. Is that right?
Yeah, I think he compared them to the Black Keys.
That's fair. That's a fair comparison. But
You love the Black Keys.
I do. But I would never, ever, ever put Mutemath in the same sentence as basic. You even asked me the other day, you said that you were considering doing a cover for this episode of the podcast, but you were trying to think of what you could do, and your words exactly were their songs are too complicated. And I said, yeah, that's nothing to do with the word basic. But I forgive him since he did say that he enjoyed the album.
Yeah, I mean he really liked it, and he's said the same thing to albums that I love that I've given him on the podcast.
He's a tough critic anyway.
Yeah, like I gave him U2's Octoon Baby, which is my favorite U2 record, and he didn't really appreciate it at the time, but like 3 months later, he was like, "Oh, this is a great album."
They
And
have to grow on him.
exactly, yeah, not every album is going to be you listen to it once and
Sure.
you love it.
No.
And that was his first time ever being exposed to them, and
He hadn't heard anything from them before?
he had heard a couple things. For example, he heard. I don't know if you remember this when you surprised me when you flew up to Washington the very first time. For that December, Tony and I put together a little concert for you.
Yes.
And
it was forever ago.
I know. And I had him listen to Notice because out of all their songs, that was like the one that I think I could sing the best. And,
yeah.
Because there's like a little guitar riff throughout the whole thing. So he played that. I played chords.
I do remember that. Oh my gosh.
And I remember when he was listening to it on Spotify for the concert, he was like, "Is that a drum machine?" And I'm like,
remember that. Oh my god.
Yeah, and I'm like, no, that is their drummer, Darren King. Like that's he plays the 16 notes so fast and clean.
Yeah.
It sounds like a drum machine.
No, Darren's the GOAT. Everybody knows. Anybody who knows Darren knows he's literally one of the best. That's my unbiased opinion, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's you said yesterday that him and Roy are the best rhythm section of all time.
One of.
Yeah.
But
I would throw out U2.
I was gonna say U2 also.
Which that's hilarious because you hate hate
Bono. No, oh my gosh. I think if they had a different singer, that's a whole other story. But if they had a different singer, they would be in my top bands.
Yeah, the running gag between you and me when it comes to bands I like is that you usually like the music for some of them, like Pearl Jam and U2, but you do not care for the vocalist. Like,
I'm pickier with vocals than you are, I would say.
Yes, for sure. Because I listen willingly to like Tom Petty, and Bob Dylan. But I like, especially with Bob Dylan, I understand he does not have a good voice, but I think it fits the music.
But I think you're also definitely you pay a lot more attention to lyrics than I do, I think.
Yeah, which is why I love Tom Petty and why I like Bob
Because they're
Dylan.
storytellers.
They're storytellers, yeah. Even when they don't tell stories, like Bruce Springsteen, like they write songs that connect with me.
I have to like the music first and foremost, and then the vocals, and then I'll listen to the lyrics.
Yeah, and this is actually probably a good thing to mention because viewers don't know your music taste.
Yeah.
Unlike Tony and I, because we
Yeah.
talk about it all the time. You know, Mutemath is your favorite band, but they're not super popular. We're obviously going to get back to them, but like your second favorite band is probably Coldplay.
Yeah.
Early Coldplay, up until I would say like maybe their fifth or sixth album, they have really complex music. Yeah, they have the hit singles like Yellow and
That are more
Clocks that
simple.
are
Oh, yeah,
straightforward.
Clocks isn't that simple, but yeah,
It,
I know
it
what you're saying.
is,
Yeah.
but you take songs from their first album, Parachute.
Sorry, not simple, basic. That's the word.
Basic,
That's
there
the
we
word of this podcast.
You're just roasting Tony.
Deservedly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If I can roast him, you can roast him.
Exactly.
But yeah, like a lot of songs have parachutes, different tunings.
Side note, that is my favorite album of all time. No question.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you like doing this podcast, you're more than welcome to come back and maybe we can do an album appreciation.
I can gush over that album,
yeah,
for sure.
But like, there's a lot of songs on the album where they're in different guitar tunings. And
yes, you covered that whole album for me, and you had a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble. A lot of them have weird chords in the weird guitar tunings, which is just double hard. But you also like bands like Radiohead, which they're very complex when it comes to their music. Yeah, they have like a Creep and a Karma Police that are pretty straightforward, but Radiohead have a lot of songs with different time signatures and different rhythms.
Yeah.
And so, and yeah, you like your bands like the Black Keys, which I think are definitely more straightforward.
Yeah.
But, you like a lot of bands that I would say have a lot of complexities in the music.
Yeah.
Not to say you don't like good lyrics, and I think most of the bands you listen to have good lyrics.
And Paul Meany, singer, Mutemath, fantastic lyrics. I'm not saying.
Oh yeah. It's just when it comes to you kind of care about the music first.
Correct.
Which is actually kind of what Tony does too. It's just Tony likes different music than you and me because he likes complexities, but he'll like them where they, in my opinion, are challenging.
Yeah.
You like something that is complex, but you don't have to listen to it 5 times to understand it. It hits you right away.
But I think he likes that too because he likes to try to learn how to play it.
Yeah, that's true.
Break it apart and figure out, okay, how do I do this? How do I do this? So that's why I think.
But I've been breaking him down with giving him Tom Petty albums and Springsteen, where it is like Tom Petty is a perfect example. He's like 4 chords in a song. That's it. Maybe there's a bridge.
Oh, we know.
You don't get that with Mutemath, and we probably should get back to Mutemath because that's what this episode's about. If you don't know Mutemath, they're alternative rock, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I think they originally they defined themselves as math rock, which is where the name comes from.
Yeah.
Progressive kind of.
And yeah, and I definitely don't listen to a lot of math rock, but their first album has the most type of math rock, but even then I think alternative it's alternative. Is definitely the better fitting genre. Now originally though, some of the guys met in another band called Earthsuit.
Yes.
Paul and was it Darren? Yeah, Paul and Darren. Now did you listen to much Earthsuit?
Once you got into so much. You know me, I don't really explore like that. Yeah. I really don't. I'll hear a song from a band and I'll love that song, but I won't go in and explore. Which is my fault.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not a fault. I mean, I'm the same way. Like I recently been getting into Wilco, and then I listened to like 3 albums and then I stopped.
Yeah.
Because I kind of got a little burnt out.
You're more open than I am though. So once I heard Mutemath, which I do have to admit, I'm a Twilight girly, and that is how I discovered them. I wish more than anything that I had discovered them sooner because their second album is one of my favorites, which came out before Twilight did. But I have to owe it to Twilight, and that soundtrack, anybody will agree with me, killer soundtrack. So
which
We're getting on vinyl.
Yeah, it was reissued. It's being reissued this month.
Stoked.
We're getting the first one and the second one
Yep.
on vinyl.
Yep.
So
Finally.
and I'm even a little excited because besides the Mutemath song on the first soundtrack, there is I think a Radiohead song.
Everything. It's
Yeah,
killer.
Paramore, You Love.
Yep.
Well, probably actually Tony and I have been meaning to do like soundtracks. So
The Black
again,
Ghost song.
yeah.
Another example. Love that song. Never went and explored the band.
The second one has a killer song and a Death Cab song,
Yep.
so I'm excited for the second one too.
And the Tom York song.
And the Tom York song,
Yeah.
yeah. So after Earthsuit, basically Mutemath was formed. They are from New Orleans,
Correct.
which I don't think I listen to any other bands from New Orleans. So I think it's cool when I think of, a city or a state, like when I think of Seattle, obviously you think of like
Yeah.
grunge. When I think of New Orleans, I automatically think of Mutemath.
Yeah.
Um, and they they their first album was their self-titled album, and it did spawn their single "Typical," which is where my little opening catchphrase came from for this episode, and it did fairly well for them. I think it could still be heard on radio every now and again.
It's in a few movies.
It's
on Rock Band, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, I do believe it's on Rock Band. And I had a really cool music video.
Oh my gosh.
Is that the one where they played it in reverse?
Yes, they learned the entire. I have to say, I'm just this episode just gonna be me gushing over them for 2 hours. They are truly one of the most creative bands I've ever had the pleasure of seeing live. And just witnessing their creativity live was such a pleasure. It was such a treat. They learned the entire song, every part, vocals, drums, guitars, everything in reverse. And when they filmed it, they obviously filmed it in reverse, and then when you play it forward, it's the song. So I highly recommend not only watching that music video, but just any of their videos are some of the most creative I've ever seen.
And they did perform it. I don't know if it was Jay Leno or I think it was Letterman. They performed it on a late night show.
It was Letterman.
Yeah. Which that always helps a band get a little bit more popular performing. And we should point out this first album and their second album, Armistice, you had 4 of them. You had Greg Hill on guitar, Roy, how do you pronounce his last name?
Mitchell Cardenas
on bass, Darren King on drums, and Paul Meany on vocals. But I say this, but really, they could swap instruments and play whatever the hell they wanted.
Exactly.
And I know you will attest to this. Like during a live show, Roy will go on keyboards.
Yep.
And
he'll hit the drums too, even.
Yeah, well, Paul will go and play some rhythm sections, and Roy can play guitar and bass. So, when we get to the third album that Tony and I talked about, Roy did like all the guitar work.
But I think it just speaks to their musicality and their ability to just, I don't know. It's like I would love to go Magic School Bus into their brains and see what they're thinking, because I just think they're some of the most creative people ever, and they're super, super talented, super, super underrated.
Yeah, I would agree. And, I had never heard of them ever in my life. And when Lyndsey and I met, obviously we connected with music. We both love music. And that's really how we met, because we both had similar interest and Glenn Hansard. And, obviously I was like, well, what's your favorite band? And you're like, Mutemath. And I was like, oh, I've never heard of them before. Where you at least had heard of Pearl Jam and Tom Petty stuff. You weren't a fan, but you'd heard of them before. And I went through all their albums and I fell in love too. To the point where right when I was getting into them, they were gearing up to release their 4th studio album, Vitals. And that was my first like Mutemath album at the time. And you flew up and we saw them in Seattle. My dad drove us to the showbox where they were performing at, and it was an amazing show. And then we both got to see them one more time on their last tour for their last album, Play Dead. So, that was a fantastic show. And Yeah, I know you said that they're one of the best, or you would say they are the best live band. And
No question.
yeah, I mean,
I've been
it's,
to a lot of live shows.
yeah, you,
Again, I'm probably biased, but man,
I no, when you're watching them and they all like play musical chairs with their instruments, that's
literally,
impressive.
when you do a handstand on your keyboard, like who does that? Who
Yeah.
does flips off of their who takes a bass drum and throws it into the crowd and literally jumps off of it into the crowd? Who does that?
And that
Nobody.
and that's really important, I think, in a live show because yeah, you want the band to sound great live, right? And perform the songs the best that they can and hopefully even better than on the album. But there's the showmanship. And you take maybe other bands where they just play through all the songs,
Yeah.
don't talk in between
Yeah.
them much, and that's it. And that's cool. And that's like the least amount you can get from your money. But the
They
fact,
pour everything. I'm going to say poured past tense. We'll get to that. They poured everything into those shows. And I can say that I have had the honor of being personally sweat on by Paul Meany because he just, man, I don't know how they did every night. And I think the first time I saw them, they played, I think like 30 songs or something like that. I have a whole wall dedicated to them. I have several set lists from each show that I've been to, framed.
you have
And
drumsticks, pieces of Darren's drum
yeah,
kits,
I have everything.
and one of the other really cool things when it comes to their live shows that I've never seen before is like Paul had made like a makeshift instrument.
The key, the Atari, the
Yeah.
Atari.
And he would pull it out for Reset, their song Reset, and it made crazy noises. And he would then like put it into the crowd and let the crowd
Make the music.
grab and click the buttons.
Oh,
And
I miss it
yeah,
so much.
it's, and then I don't know if this was like more for the later tours, but I know when we saw them, the two times I saw them with you, um, they had an air mattress.
Yeah, with police lights on it.
Yeah, that the crowd would hold up and then
He would
Paul would
jump on it.
jump on
No,
it.
that was well. I guess it's considered in their later tours. But the first time I saw them was the Odd Soul tour in 2012, and that was the one that they implemented it
Yeah.
on. So
And we probably should point out, so after their second album, Greg Hill, their guitarist, he left. And yeah, you're sad because on their third album, Roy did double duty. He did guitar and bass,
yeah,
but they got Todd
Gummerman,
Gummerman, where he plays guitar. He also plays synths and
keys.
keys
He
and
sings too.
bass and I'm sure drums too.
They do it all.
Yeah. And so they were a four-piece again.
Yeah,
But that was your like first like new
that
album
was my
from them.
first. Yeah, once I was hooked on Twilight, I ventured out and explored. Surprisingly, well, what if I never did that? Can you imagine? I would have not been the same person.
That's a huge what if.
I would
Yeah.
have not been the same person. This band was a huge. How old am I? I'm 28 now, and this band was a huge part of my formative years.
To the point where you did something for them, in a sense. Not for them, but you created something online.
Oh yes, I don't go on it anymore. But back in the Tumblr days, I had a Tumblr page dedicated to them. I'm not gonna say it on the podcast because it has a bad word in it, but it was mutemath.tumblr.com. Shameless plug.
Is Tumblr still around? Are they still?
Tumblr's still around, yeah, for sure.
Okay,
I don't go on it anymore, but yeah. Oh man, that was good times. But
so you never got to see the band with Greg as their original. So you
never.
never saw the original one.
Unfortunately, man, I never got to
Yeah.
see Greg. Man, he was super talented too. I watched the documentary that they did for their second album, and just to see how their brains work, especially Greg, it's very fascinating.
Yeah, and I think too something just about them in general that I really appreciate is almost every one of their albums have a different sound.
Definitely.
Like their first one has that more, alt rock
Classic
2000s. Paul's even doing some like screams that you would hear bands do in the
not like
early.
screamo, but
No, but like, there's a couple
gritty,
songs where
gritty.
yeah, he gets gritty. Their second album, I think, was taking that sound, but then adding some layers to it.
It's more moody for sure,
Mhm.
and I think it shows more of their New Orleans influence, which is such a rich New Orleans is such a it's known for its culture and
Yeah.
its music, and I think you can definitely hear their influence. It was recorded in New Orleans, in a little house that they rented, and you can hear the city in that album,
Yeah.
and that's why
The
it's so special to me, I think.
title track alone, you have
Yeah,
the horns,
yeah.
and that
Stand up bass,
reminds you exactly of that New Orleans
French
sound.
Quarter, yeah, definitely.
Um, and then the third album, when Greg left and Roy was kind of doing, double duty, like that album is to me kind of their 70s rock
Yes.
sound. You
Organs.
Yeah, Paul's playing organs because like, Paul played a lot of keys on the first two albums, but the band just went in a direction where like the organs
Why
sounded
not?
best.
Why not?
Yeah.
They experiment and I love it.
Yeah. And the band does have some touches of religion in their early music
Yes. No,
and
not even just I would say throughout. Every
throughout.
album has.
Yeah. But the best thing about them is like you couldn't consider them like a Christian rock band because their songs, even in the lyrics, have so many meanings that it's never just about one thing.
And I think even they would say that they're not a Christian, but they weren't a Christian band. And you and I, we're not, admittedly, we're not religious people, but you're right. We can take the song that has religious undertones and just completely interpret it however we want, which is true for all music, but
Yeah.
like the song Control, and what's another one that we mentioned?
You Are Mine
You Are Mine. Yes.
from the first album.
Definitely you could definitely consider that a religious song, but you can also see it as a love song just between two people, and that's what I appreciate too. It's so open and willing to, how do I just say it, like
Yeah, no, like it's there the fact that you can
open
interpret
to
it.
interpretation.
Yeah,
That's what I was
exactly.
looking for. Yes.
Yeah. And the reason I brought that up is because that organ sound, I wonder if like that's something Paul got from like going to church
Oh, it
because
could have been. Yeah.
that, but again, it never sounds cheesy on Odd Soul. Like it works perfectly.
And just side note, they lugged that organ for the entire Odd Soul tour, and I remember I think I saw an interview where Paul would get shocked from it, like intense shocks from it. And I don't know, I just thought that was an interesting point.
Yeah, because I'm sure they're sweating all over it,
No,
and
seriously.
it probably was
Old.
beat up.
It was old.
Yeah, by
Yeah.
the end of the tour.
Ugh.
So that was your first album with them, your first tour.
Yes.
Um,
How old was I? I was in high school. I think I was
Came
either,
out in 2011.
oh my God, how old am I? I think I was a junior in high school. Sophomore? One of the two.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And you saw them. Where was the first place you saw them? You saw them here in
Let me
California?
pull up my handy dandy setlist.fm.
Definitely the band you've seen live the
I've
most.
seen them a total of 10 times. I'm even counting the small little shows because, I still saw
Yeah.
them. The very first time I saw them was in Sacramento in 2012 at a great little kind of smaller venue. And then I saw them after that the same year. They opened for the Honda Civic Tour in 2012, where it was with them and Incubus and Linkin Park. And that was amazing. We had amazing seats. And I remember knowing that Mutemath was going to go on before the other two bands. I wanted to get there super early. It was at an amphitheater outdoors. And I was all decked out in my my gear, my Mutemath shirt, which is like a bright blue shirt, and we had literally like front row seats. And I just remember, people are still filtering in and out, trying to make their way to their seats, and nobody really wants to go for the first band. You want to go for Incubus and Linkin Park. And so when they came on, I think they played like 5 or 6 songs maybe, and it was like a personal show. They knew that I was like the only one there who really knew them,
Yeah.
and I was losing my shit, for lack of a better word. I was singing every word, and I was recording and just taking pictures. And I think I even, again, I was in high school, so I was a total definition of a fangirl. And yeah, it just felt like such a special personal show for me. And then I went and met them after, and they were just like, you could tell that they were appreciative that I was there and showed up for them.
And everyone who at one point in their life, especially when they're younger, will say, I'm this band or this artist number one fan. For that particular show, there was no doubt they saw you as
Yeah.
their number one fan.
And that's such a cool feeling,
Yeah.
for anybody, but
Because when I saw Pearl Jam, it was at a huge venue.
and it
And
didn't feel as personal, right?
exactly, yeah. Like I was in general admission and I was, only maybe like 8 rows back from the front stage, but the whole arena, because at the time it was the Key Arena, was so big that unless you're in the front row or you're a little kid, little kids sometimes will get Eddie Vedder will throw out tambourines in them and they'll kind of get special treatment. You don't really have those interactions. So, I think it actually was a benefit to you that they weren't a huge selling band.
Definitely. Oh, I soaked that up for sure.
Yeah.
And side note, they are the nicest people you will ever, ever, ever meet. They genuinely care about their fans. And I remember, I don't know what to say to these people. I'm like, I idolize you, but what do I say to you? And they just were so kind and just, they were willing to talk to me and just listen to me gush over them basically. And it's just a good feeling.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So and then you traveled out of
I
state to see
did.
them a couple
I
times.
did. The third time I saw them was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I have to admit, we didn't originally go just to see them across the state, across the country. We were going to New York, and I just happened to see where they were that same night, and they were in Pittsburgh, and I was like, hey, that seems pretty close. So we drove, and it wasn't even that close. It was like 6 hour drive. I don't know, something crazy like that. And it ended up being one of my favorite shows there with them. They had they shout out to their tour manager because they had killer openers for every tour that I saw them on. For that tour in particular, it was Civil Twilight, which isn't a big known band, but if you ever need a new music suggestion, I highly recommend them. And I got the pleasure of seeing and meeting them too. And it was just it's proof. And I was actually further back at that show. I wasn't toward. I like being toward the front for any show I go to, but I was actually toward the back. And they're a band that you don't need to be toward the front because they interact with the crowd so much. They did the mattress where you're going to he's going to the back of
Yeah.
the room, and they even did a cart too where I think they called it their C stage or B stage, one of the two. And he got on the cart during one song and just wheeled himself out into the middle of the room. So I think I touched his hand during one song.
I call that discount Coldplay.
Yeah, exactly. So it shows that you don't have to you can be anywhere in the room and it's going to be the best show of your life, basically.
And I remember, I think looking at if we looked at your set list for all your shows, I feel like it was that one where they played some of their
more rarities. I saw
yes.
Electrify. Hello.
Yeah.
So
it was only maybe played a handful of times after that show or that tour,
yes.
probably.
Killer.
So, and then I know you've seen them more times here, right?
I saw them at a couple festivals. I saw them at Made in America Fest in Los Angeles, so I've seen them all up and down California. And then I got to see them at Jimmy Kimmel. In what year was that? That was right after I met you.
Yeah, because they were going to play a song from the Vitals.
Yes, they were releasing new music. They played. I think it was 2 songs that they recorded.
One that was out at the time, which was Monument.
Yes.
And then one that had not been released yet. I think they only played it a couple times, but it was Used To.
I stand corrected. They played 3 songs because I knew that they played Light Up.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So yes, 3 songs.
Because I remember you texting me because it was before I moved.
Yeah.
You were texting me. You're like, they're playing like a brand new song.
Yeah.
And you loved it.
Do you remember too? I was pissed because I, of course, wanted to wear a Mutemath shirt that I had a million of them, and I wanted to show that I was a fan. If you're gonna be on TV, I want them to see my support, and I don't think that they allowed it or something weird, and I was so pissed. And I texted you, and I said, I'm so mad. And you're like, oh, that's it. It was something funny like that. So I don't know why I remember that, but. And it was like 100 degrees that day too, but it was so worth it, even just for 3 songs,
Yeah. Plus, I probably the only time you've been to like a taping of a late night show. Yeah. I know Jimmy Kimmel, he does his out most of the time in that big outdoor.
That's where it was. It was outside, yeah.
But that's still, I can't say I've ever been to anything like that.
After that, I'm saying it's my favorite show every time, but the next show that I went to was at a hole in the wall place in San Francisco called Brick and Mortar. tiny, tiny. I've never been to a smaller venue for a concert. That was honestly, they started so late for some. I don't know why they started so late, but we were there till like 1 o'clock in the morning.
I remember because you were texting me
Yes.
during it, and
Like they were, I have videos, we know it's time stamped, and they always played long shows, which I loved. And they were playing at like 12:45 in the morning still.
because
And
who was the opening band? Was it Civil Twilight for that one?
no,
Oh,
I saw Civil Twilight there later on.
oh, okay, that's what I'm thinking of. That's what I'm thinking
Yeah,
of.
they had the Quiet Entertainer. That was the DJ.
Now, was that the show, um, or you could tell me which show it was, where it was super hot?
Oh my God. So you're literally in that room like a can of sardines. And um it was in, I think it was in October, something like that. And sweltering. I thought I was going, we were up very up front. Because of course we got there. We were the first ones there.
Yeah.
And so we're right up front, and I thought I was gonna die. I was like on the verge of passing out because I'm singing my heart out and I'm dancing and it's hot and there's just so many people in there. And I think Roy noticed because I was right in front of Roy. And like I mentioned, nicest guys you'll ever meet. He noticed that I was dying and he offered me one of his waters. So thank you, Roy, if you're listening, because that saved my life and my mom's life too. Because it was rough. I mean, it was worth it, but man, it was rough.
Yeah, it's when you go to a show where you know every word and you're singing along.
It's hard. It's hard work.
Because you don't realize how loud you're singing because the noise is
Yeah.
so loud and people around you are so loud, you can't really make out how you're singing.
Yeah.
So by a song like Five, you're probably already yeah, you're basically felt like you were gonna die. But in probably the best way you
In
could.
the best way.
Yeah.
Euphoria, for sure. Following that, I saw them again in Sacramento, which another great opening band was Paper Route. Oh,
Yes.
killer. One of the best openings I've ever seen.
Another band I didn't know until I saw them with you in Seattle.
Yeah, highly recommend them. And then we finally get to our show, which I traveled up to Washington to see you, and it was your first Mutemath show. It was the same tour, but they had different openers for certain shows. For that show, it was, I'm blanking on who it was.
It was
Was it Paper Route?
It was Paper Route, yeah.
There was somebody else though.
There was another band, but I can't remember who it was. I will tell you a name of a band that opened for them at one of the two shows we saw them. It was Rome's.
That was the last show.
That was the last show with Colony.
Colony House at Rome's, yes.
I don't remember who.
I don't either.
Oh
my God, we're bad fans.
We're bad, but Paper Route was a joy.
Love
and
them.
I actually think Paper Route sounds even better live than their album.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, they always had good openers.
Yeah, and yeah, that being my first Mutemath show, I was hooked. I mean, I was already hooked on their music, but I was hooked on their live performance.
So much, and I just have to point out, I know we keep going off on tangents, but that show, I lent you one of my shirts.
That blue one that you were talking about earlier.
Bright blue one, yeah. And we were not up front for that show. We didn't buy the first in line passes. So we were maybe like 5 rows back, 4 rows back?
Yeah, probably 4 or 5.
So still fairly close.
Yeah.
And for some reason, Paul asked the crowd after one song, he's like, so we got any first timers here? And as soon as I heard first timers, of course, I'm like, what? Like I was wailing, and Paul heard me and he was like, oh, hi. And then he like turned and saw Rico, and I'm like pointing at him like, it's him. And then Paul was like, oh, like, welcome or something. He's like, I see you got a Mutemath gear on too. So yeah, it was just a fun memory. And of course, I'm like geeking out the whole time. So
also not the first, or well, that was the first time, but that was not the last time that a frontman pointed out a shirt I was wearing.
Shout out Spoon.
But yeah, that was a fantastic show. They did the air mattress.
You know what they did too?
For Bulletproof, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm telling you, they are the most creative people ever. Darren, who we haven't even talked about enough, how talented Darren is. He came up with this mechanism. It was like gloves that lit up, and he would pull random people from the crowd up on stage and have them just hold their hands up with these gloves, and he would drum on their hands on these gloves and make music. And it was
and they like lit up and stuff.
Yes.
And they were
yes. Amazing.
So fantastic show. And then I guess just to wrap up like their history, and then we're going to get into.
I know we're going all over. I know.
No, I mean that's
I
I
told
mean,
you I was gonna gush for 2 hours,
yeah,
so
no, yeah, and we're far from done, but I think to the historical sense, they do vitals, they tour, we see them, and they announce a new album, Play Dead, and it there was an announcement that Roy said, "Hey, I want to spend more time with my family, and I'm just not going to be on tour."
my heart sank.
Yeah.
Literally. Not
It,
literally,
it
but
was still on the albums, and he's like, I will pop up for shows occasionally, and a lot of bands do that now. The Killers, there's
sure.
only two members who are still
They have their
tours.
families. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then sadly, not long after that, before the tour started, Darren, released a
He
statement,
bounced too.
and but he was just like, I'm stepping away from Mutemath entirely. So
I think I cried. I
yeah,
genuinely think I cried.
it
I was
was,
devastated.
yeah, because I mean, you at this point with this lineup, you lose anyone and it's devastating.
But for the rhythm section to be gone, like, oh,
I think out of all of them, it's the hardest to replace Darren because he's such a specific drummer, and I don't drum. That's like one of the instruments that I don't dabble in too much, just because I don't have a drum kit or anything. But drumming, it's its own beast, and
is a beast.
he's a beast, and he would get like so. I mean, it's funny. It's like mathematics almost for him in the drums, and that's not like a play. Like I'm not mute math, but like he could be very. He could play something straightforward. He could play complicated. He could show off, and he could also like step aside and let other members shine.
When you have to gaffer tape your headphones to your head during your show, you're going to be hard to replace.
Yeah,
He put, again, their heart and soul. He put his heart and soul into every show. He became one with the drums every time.
yeah. So that was devastating, and we had already pre-ordered the album. We had bought tickets to see them, and they did find replacements for Roy and for Darren,
Thank
but
God.
yeah. So we still got to see them one last time because Play Dead as an album is fantastic. I think to me, Play Dead, their last album, kind of has bits and pieces from all of their previous albums.
It's such a good mix of everything all together.
Yeah. And I believe I remember they did a lot of like behind the scenes
Yes, they
leading
did.
up to it.
Yes.
And I remember when they were interviewing for Vitals, they talked about how Vitals was hard for them to make, and they like did a different songwriting process where they would all write songs separately,
Yeah.
like one a day, and bring them into the studio, and that's how Vitals was made. But they actually had mentioned they started recording songs for Play Dead before Vitals, and they got kind of stuck.
Yep.
They did the Vitals songwriting.
I remember them trying to play some of the songs live. I think they were in like Australia or
Hit Parade, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. So, but you can definitely tell on Vitals it is their most electronic album, their most I would say poppy album.
For sure. Yeah, it's by far their most pop. Yeah, you don't really have a song like a Spotlight, or you don't have a typical on that album.
Still an amazing album, and more sentimental for us because that was how I first introduced you to them.
Yeah, and I will say, like, yeah, some of my favorite Mutemath songs are on Vitals. Remain, one of the few songs that has made me cry listening to
the
it.
very first time I heard that song, I busted. I was bawling.
Yeah.
And that's actually, I don't think I've ever had that reaction to any other song hearing it for the first time ever.
Yeah, that was like a very special moment, and we were fortunate to see it that one live too.
I cried there too.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite pictures of us together is right after that show where they played Remain, and then my eyes are all puffy and good times.
So yeah, it was a heartbreaking thing to learn that not only is two of the members not going to be playing the tour with the rest of the guys, but there was the unknown. What is going to happen with the band after this tour? And they did very little press for this album, and they did the tour, and basically Paul was like, going forward, probably if I do any music, it's going to be under my name or another name. He said, Mutemath, maybe in the future we will release stuff.
The future was unknown.
Yeah, and since then, unfortunately, besides a EP of like leftover tracks and
Some gems on that though. Let's be real.
oh no, yeah, that Voice in the Silence, that's the EP I'm talking about. Um, there is a alternative version of one of the songs from Play Dead that you love.
Yeah.
Um,
Probably
also,
my second favorite Meat Mouse song ever.
yeah,
Everything's New.
um, a work of art which I think dates
Oh,
back to like self-titled or
yes.
Armistice.
Because there's
Um,
two different versions of that album, of the self-titled album.
yeah,
Um,
uh,
different record labels
yeah, teleprompt and then
Warner
Warner
Brothers.
Brothers. Yeah.
Yes. But
Um,
the first version of that song,
you
of
you prefer, yeah.
definitely 100%.
We need a pause because Charlie is stuck.
Charlie,
I,
what happened to you? His tail. Well, you're gonna knock it over.
you gonna
Oh my goodness sakes. You did it.
You also have on that EP one of three Mute Math songs with acoustic guitar, which I think is just really cool. They don't do a lot of acoustic guitars in their songs.
And that's, remember I mentioned earlier I didn't really care about lyrics. That has some of my favorite lyrics he's ever written.
Yeah.
You're talking about Distance.
Distance, yeah.
Wedding song, 100%.
Yeah.
Such good lyrics.
And then I think another song that dates back to like the band's early days, Sooner or Later, is one of your favorites. I remember I went back and that song is on some set list for their first tour. It just that was never finalized for any future albums up until the EP. So
The question of if you can go back in time and see any band, I would probably see one of their first tours. No, I would see the Armistice tour because Greg's on it and it's one of my favorite albums from him. Anyway, I
yeah,
had to throw that out there.
no, yeah, I mean, and because one thing too, we probably should bring up with this band is I love it when bands release live music constantly. I love when bands like Pearl Jam, Bruce Springsteen, even like Dave Matthews, they record every show and they release it. But Mew Math kind of did it their own way. They basically up until at least Vitals for their first three albums, they recorded like their shows and released live albums. There's one for Subtitled, there's one for Armistice. I think Odd Soul it's more like an EP, but that one also had a live DVD, which I remember watching with you that I think is fantastic. And even with their last album, Play Dead, they did release a full live album many years after the tour,
But one of the songs was from our show,
yeah,
Placed on Hold, which freaking juice that they played that. We didn't think they were going to.
they weren't playing it at every show.
No. And you can, if you go onto Spotify and you listen to it, you can literally hear my scream at the beginning.
Because unfortunately, for some reason, that was a bonus. That was a bonus track for the live album. It's if you buy like the vinyl of it, it's not on it, unfortunately. But on Spotify, Placed on Hold, I think is like the last song. And yeah, you can definitely hear Lyndsey screaming at the very beginning.
Yeah.
So but yeah, sadly, other than like the EP and that the live Play Dead album, Mute Math, unfortunately,
is dead.
Is pretty
As
much
is
no
my
more.
heart.
Yeah. They took the album title seriously. They played
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I feel like I don't listen to a lot of bands that have like retired. I have a lot of bands where like the lead singers passed away, Tragically Hip or Tom Petty. But like the only other band I can think of that I listen to regularly that like broke up is like REM or the White Stripes. And yeah, they all I think still do music things on their own.
Darren just released 2 albums on his own. Roy does his own side projects. Todd,
I know he works with a lot of
yes,
people.
he does. And of course, Paul's working with 21 Pilots, and he's found great success in that. Great success.
Yeah, yeah, as a producer.
Yeah,
and because like their production on all their albums are flawless,
Top
especially
notch.
for their
notch.
sound.
Yes.
Yeah, so they all still play music and write music,
but nothing will ever come close to the genius of Mute Math.
That is true. Now I do want to kind of bring up like maybe some of your favorite songs because when Tony and I do these album appreciation, our artist appreciation episodes, you know, we like to kind of point out some of our favorites from,
Each album.
yeah, and I actually I think I know a lot of your favorites. So I know that, well, I thought your favorite was Everything New, but I'm thinking it's Placed on Hold.
It changes. It changes. We actually did a what do you call it? Like a
March
March Madness
Madness.
bracket for every one of their songs. And at the time it was Everything's New.
Yeah.
But it does change between that and Placed on Hold, which is both songs are from their latest album. Their last album.
I think my favorite sentimentally is Remain.
Yes.
But what I think is their best song,
Placed on Hold.
Placed on Hold for me.
Yeah.
Because that's a song where it starts off with acoustic guitar, which again, like I remember, because again, they did clips of behind the scenes making of the album. I remember on the clip for Placed on Hold, you saw the I don't know if it was Roy or
and I shit my pants.
God playing acoustic guitar, and we're like, what the hell's going on? And the song has a really kind of like the verses are chill, the choruses are a little empathetic, but then you get this electric guitar riff that comes in like halfway through, and it's killer, and like the drums just start ramping up. Paul's vocals get really loud, and the song just kind of builds and builds and builds.
I still say that album would have been better if it ended with that song.
Yeah, and
perfect end.
Yeah, because I do a lot of times when I listen to albums, I resequence them in my mind.
Yes. Oh, I know you do.
Yeah, that's the reason this podcast exists, basically. But I would agree that it's a better closer, even though the closer on that album, Marching to the End, probably could only go last.
And it's super cool that he included the recording of the organ from, I don't know how to say it, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So that's a cool little fun fact.
We didn't really know that until, remember, it caught on fire.
Yeah, he posted about it.
He posted a clip of him recording it, so that was really cool. Yeah. So two of your favorite songs come from their last album, which is crazy.
But I think overall, again, this changes every other day, but I think my favorite album from them is Armistice.
Yeah.
No, maybe not. I don't know. Now that I'm thinking, I think it's Play Dead, but no, it's Armistice.
I think you think Armistice is a better album
because then they're self-titled too. It's like you can't. Pick.
Yeah. I think if you had to, I think Play Dead is more re-listenable to you because it has the best of everything. But I think you think that the track list for Armistice is more solid. There's not any songs on Armistice where
there's no misses.
Yeah, not that there's for you any misses on Play Dead, but I know there's a couple of songs where you like them, but you don't like love them. I feel like Armistice, you love.
It's a flawless album.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
Now speaking of Armistice, one of your favorite songs didn't even make it on the track list.
Yes, correct.
And what song is that?
And I'm not proud to admit the amount of dough we dropped on getting this song on a 45.
Yeah,
it was worth it. The song is Architecture, and
it's an amazing song. I mean, to me, it has the best elements of Armistice. It's moody. It starts off with that kind of like bass.
It's more gritty though.
To me, it has like the guitars kind of remind me of more self-titled, but it's got the darkness of Armistice.
Just go listen to it. It's one of their best.
You're gonna have to find it on YouTube though, because it's unreleased.
I am proud to say that I got the pleasure of talking to Paul about it, because I was practically begging him. It was before the Brick and Mortar show in San Francisco, and again, they always talk to their fans, and of course, me just geeking out to him, I said, hey, kind of joking, because I know it's a hard song. It is so not basic. It is so complex that they never would have been able to play it live without extensive practice.
Yeah.
And so I said, hey, just saying, we would love to hear Architecture live one day. And he kind of laughed and he's like, yeah, okay. Because he knew
one day.
Because he knew that it was just such an intense thing. So
well, I think too, for bands, especially bands that are maybe smaller, they're like, do we go to the trouble of relearning a B-side that was like never really officially
Can you
released?
imagine that live?
It would go off.
It would go so hard.
Yeah. Um, and then another song that I know you really love that isn't really on a Mutemath album, it's on a soundtrack, which is Valium.
Yes, 90210.
Yeah, the remake, right?
I don't know. I never watched
I think
it.
it's the remake. That song also has acoustic guitar in it.
There isn't a B-side bonus track that I don't like.
Yeah.
They're all fabulous.
There's a song, another B-side from Armistice called Forte that I know you really
Oh,
like.
yeah. I don't quote me on this. I think he wrote this for his late grandfather. Stunning. It's
Yeah.
emotional. And they're very good at instrumentals, and that's one of their instrumentals, and it's beautiful.
And there's a couple other like bonus tracks for Odd Soul, but I think most of the Vitals bonus songs should have been on the album.
Yeah, they're killer.
Somewhere Right is fantastic.
Yeah.
That
Self.
You Love Self, yeah. And then what's the other one? Fine After All. That one's good too.
Azteca.
Aztec is the one that's the one they would play live out of all the
Yes,
bonus
yes.
ones, which is cool. Another thing I guess I should have pointed out earlier from them is like on almost all of their albums, there is an instrumental track. On self-titled,
At least one.
at least one. On self-titled, you got two.
Yeah.
They start off one of their songs, Stare at the Sun, and it's got, lyrics and vocals and everything. But as you think the song's going to end, they go to it like an extended jam of the groove of the ending.
There's three actually.
Is there?
The opener?
Oh, I mean, yeah, those are like kind of interludes. Collapse, I think, is like a real full song.
Oh.
They're instrumentals, but I'm talking about like because Obsolete is what follows Stare at the Sun.
Yeah.
And that one, like the bass riff on that one is Chef's Kiss. Like that's perfect.
I think one of their best instrumentals on that album is actually just in general is Reset.
Yeah.
Reset goes so hard live, and if I ever was to create a television show, there's a little snippet in that song that would be the opening credits for sure.
Yeah.
Coming for your house.
And that was the Atari song that they would do live, and that one I think they played it. I know they played it for sure at the Play Dead tour when we saw them.
They played it, I think, almost every tour that I saw them at.
I can't remember about for some reason I didn't think they played it at the Vital store, but I might.
We didn't prepare for this. We're terrible podcasters.
Yeah. Tony and I do not do much better research on our own.
I came up with this idea yesterday because Rico needed footage, not footage.
I mean, I did. I tried recording an episode.
I came to save the day.
And you did, because I tried doing an episode on my own and it was kind of a fail. I think in the future I could do a better version of it, but yeah, it was an idea that I think is fantastic, because this is a band that most people will not know, unfortunately. Like, they're not even like, obviously you think of like the best of all times, like the Beatles, or if you're talking about rock, you're going to bring up like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, but they don't even have like the popularity of like even smaller rock bands or like indie bands like Death Cab for Cutie or Spoon.
Yeah.
Because those bands will have a couple hit songs every now and again that'll end up on TV shows. I mean, you might do too, but they just never reach the charts.
It's criminal.
Yeah.
It's criminal.
And if I had to guess, if we were to rank these albums, I think you would go Vitals as your least favorite.
No, I can't even say that, because each album has its own sentiment.
You refuse to rank them.
Yes. Haha. I'm not doing it.
You're not following the rules.
I'm not following the rules. They're all perfect.
I mean, I immediately don't love them as much as you, so I will rank them.
No, I'm going to rank it for you. How about that?
Oh, you rank mine.
Okay. So, I'm going to butcher this, I think. I want to say your favorite is probably Play Dead. And then I'm going to put Vitals in the middle for the sentiment for you. Not musically, it's for the sentiment. Second favorite, probably Armistice. And then Vitals. Then Self-Titled, then Odd Soul.
Hmm.
Did I fuck that up?
No, because okay, I think you are right. I think I used to agree with you that, or well, because a lot of times you will say Armistice is one of your favorites. I used to think that was my favorite because I think I like the tone of that album the best. But Play Dead,
Is that your favorite?
I think Play Dead is my
Okay,
favorite
good. I said that. I win.
because even because there's some songs on there that I like, I think more than you. Like I like Marching to the End. Yeah, it's not one I put on a ton
No,
because
it's just it depresses me.
it is, yeah, it's a
And
very
then
sad song, but
and they took it literally. They
yeah.
marched to the end.
But like I like a song like Nuisance, which is kind of to me like it's a palate cleanser on the album.
Mhm.
And I like the kind of more playful things like
Pixie
Pixie
Oaks.
Oaks, which he wrote for his daughter, who his daughter even sings on the track.
Oh, shout out Amelia.
Um and yeah, so I think that one to me doesn't have any skips.
Did
And
I
then
rank Odd Soul too low for you?
see I battle with because I don't think there's a clear like
Okay, good. You
bottom
suck at
line.
this too. Perfect.
I do. I think I technically would actually put Vitals last if I'm being honest
No, absolutely.
with the music. I am someone who's a little less into pop than you.
Were you freaking out when I first had you listen to that? I think Monument was the first one. You're like, what the fuck does this girl
No,
listen
because
to?
that wasn't the first Mutemath song I ever heard. You had me like listen to like
Oh, I
Typical,
did.
like
Okay.
Spotlight,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, I thankfully I heard the early stuff because yeah, if it would have been Monument,
Thankfully.
but
It's
I remember when Monument came out, I loved that song because I love the lyrics because
yes.
that was a very love
Sentiment.
song,
Yes. Yes.
and we had just met, so it was kind of the right place, right time for
Yes.
Monument.
Light up too.
I think if you're an older fan of the band, like if you knew them from the very beginning, there might be moments where Monument doesn't hit for you or Light Up or whatever. But I do think I'd have to say like nostalgia wise, that's probably my second favorite. But yeah, like music wise, it's probably my least favorite. There are days where I put Odd Soul over self-titled.
See, it changes. It's
It does change, and it's hard because they have a small
wait,
discography.
pun intended. We didn't even talk about changes.
We didn't, yeah. After Vitals, the band took the songs and did remixes. Some of the band members did like Paul did a remix for one of the songs, Darren, but they had some other guests come in. I want to say the
Paper Route lead singer.
Paper Out Lead
JT
singer,
Daly.
he did a remix. And on this remix album, the very first song isn't actually a Vital song. It's a Vital leftover song called Changes, and that's where
Killer.
the album title comes from.
Killer.
And I remember that came out like right around your birthday, whatever year that came out. And you
I think Play Dead came out on September 8th or something.
yeah, I probably
That
did.
was my birthday
Yeah.
present.
So, but yeah, Changes is a great song. And we saw that on the Play Dead tour.
That's a perfect song, a perfect blend of techno and alt rock.
Yeah, because
It's done so well.
yeah, after like the chorus, it definitely has a little bit of that techno. Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what the rest of the album sounds like for the remixes. But that song has actually organic pianos at the end.
Beautiful.
And yeah,
Beautiful.
that one's
Perfect.
great. I guess if that one was counted as an album, that would be my least favorite just because I'm not a remix person.
I know you're
There's
not.
nothing against
You're not.
Mutemath. The Killers used to have a remix on the bonus editions on every album, and I always disliked them. So,
Hey, me too.
okay, yeah, but that's because you, okay, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I agree with you that they're hard to rank. Maybe it's just because there's not that many. Like with Pearl Jam, they have now like 11, 12 albums. It's easy to kind of rank the bottom ones, but Mutemath, they don't. I don't know. They don't have as many albums, so it's a lot harder for me to rank them. But I really the thing I like about them the most is that I can kind of listen to them at any time because if it's the summertime and we're swimming or whatever, I put on some of the Play Dead songs like Stroll On and Break the Fever. They just have those really kind of upbeat vibes.
Stroll On, maybe one of the only songs to utilize a ping pong ball.
Yeah,
that
for
I know
sure.
of.
And then on a cloudy, rainy day, you can listen to anything off Armistice and just it kind of fits the vibe. Um, that great 70s rock on old Odd Soul. Like they're just one of those bands where like unlike a band like Radiohead, I feel like they have kind of one sound and they do it fantastically.
Sad.
But it's sad. For Mutemath, they kind of are all over the place in a good way. Like they don't stick to one lane. And I think that's what made them fantastic. And I know we're sad that they're no longer a band, but we just got to remember everything they gave us. I mean,
Don't be sad that it's over. What is it? Smile because it happened or
I
something?
try.
No, I don't even care. I'm sad.
No, you could be sad. I'm just saying, like
They were, unintended, monumental to my life.
but I think that they went out on a bang because I think Play Dead, if they were to end any sooner, if they would have ended after Vitals, that would have been criminal because it's like there's
more.
But Play Dead, it I don't know, I don't even think they knew probably at the time of the recording what was happening with the band. But the fact that Play Dead has kind of, to me, the aspects from every other album, it's like the perfect send off.
Yeah.
And some bands don't get that. REM, they knew they were breaking up, so that's what they did for their last album. Some bands don't get that. So, and who knows? Never say never. Maybe when they're all old, they're like, we're gonna do one more tour, one more album.
Rico has always been the optimist in the relationship.
Well, yeah, I like to look at things more optimistically.
I'm a realist.
And that's fine too. There's nothing bad with that. But at least when it comes to music, I like to be optimistic. And that kind of sort of worked with the new Program album. I only dislike part of it, so. But yeah, is there any other thing that you want to mention?
I just want to say, if they're listening, thank you. Because they literally, imagine me without Mutemath. Can you imagine me?
I can imagine you.
I don't even know, like.
But not without Mutemath.
I would not be me. It sounds so corny to say, but they changed my life and I'll miss them forever.
They'll forever be in our hearts.
Always forever. They'll remain.
Exactly.
Perfect send off.
And that's funny you bring that up because if things go according to plan in the next couple days, that actually was the song I was going to cover for the end of this episode.
Oh.
If things don't go according to plan, you're just going to hear our normal theme music, which has happened before in the past. I will claim that I'm going to cover a song and then I don't get the chance to finish it. But I've already started the cover, so we'll see how that goes. But thank you so much, honey, for you co-hosting this episode with me.
I think this is the best episode ever. Just saying.
I would agree.
Just saying.
Apologies if the sound quality isn't up to our, normal, how it normally sounds, because unfortunately I don't have a setup to record both of us with our own mic setup. So the sound quality might be a little off. I'm going to try my best.
I think we talk loud enough. I think it'll be good.
I that's what I'm hoping. So, not sure what's going to happen next week. Tony might be back by then. We might be doing our album for album episodes. Or I'm trying to do an episode with Matt and Chris, who have been on the podcast before. So you might hear from the three of us. You might hear from Tony, me, or if none of that pans out, maybe I'll be doing another episode with Lyndsey. Or if not, I'll just be by myself.
Who knows?
I had a great time today. And yeah, we're going to hopefully play you off with a little Mutemath cover here. And until next time, we hope you take care and you will be listening. You'll be hearing from us soon. Bye-bye.
Listen to Mutemath.
I've been dreaming of a day in the end, waiting for someone to wake me from the dream that I'm in. I've been confiscating every shred of hope that I can. I keep on mistaking the future for the places I've been. Always the same, always forever we remain. Always the same. I'm dying just to keep my place. I've been breaking and repairing everything that I make, just to feel important and worth the little space that I take. I keep on delaying everything I'd rather avoid, rapidly decaying and panicking. I'm losing the choice. Always the same, always forever we remain. Always the same. I'm dying just to keep my place. Just keep trying, just keep fighting, just